Good afternoon or evening for those of you joining from various parts of the world. Welcome back to the second half of our Digital Trade Conference. Had a very exciting morning. I'm Julian David. I'm the CEO of techUK. techUK is the trade association for digital tech companies in the UK. And we're absolutely delighted, first of all, to be hosting this conference today with the help of our sponsors and partners, but also because it gives us the opportunity to launch our new report, which is about setting out a blueprint for UK digital trade. And it's a crucial moment for the UK as it looks to recover from the pandemic and also to build its relationships with the world's strongest economy. We believe digital trade will be fundamental to the success of the Global Britain Agenda. You can see the report on our website. It is live now, but I wanted to take the next 15 minutes or so to talk you through some of the background and some of the major points that we are seeking to focus on in the report and give you a taster for that. And then I will be joined for a discussion, I'm pleased to say, by Minister for Exports from the UK, Graham Stewart, at about past, and we'll have a discussion, he and I, about various items, some of which come from the report, some from the ongoing trade relationships that we have. So there's been obviously a major impact from COVID on digital trade. Protectionism was on the rise before the pandemic, but that trend, you can argue, has been accelerated by what happened in COVID-19 as countries scrambled to get access to PPE, then to vaccines, which is still going on. And in the digital arena, a lack of shared definitions and norms for digital trade have also helped create conditions where protectionism can spread. We've seen a growing number of countries that have introduced measures that seek to either shelter their domestic markets from international competition or shelter their citizens from outside services by restricting trade and help create conditions where protectionism can spread even if it's not so overt. It's not, however, all doom and gloom. We see that multilateralism has been in crisis for a number of years, but we're now seeing signs of a revival. And things like the new administration in the United States, the renewed European Union interest in transatlantic cooperation, coupled with some very interesting developments in digital trade in the Asia-Pacific space, should make us hopeful, we think, about the way forward. The UK, for its part, has signed FTAs with both Japan and the EU with modern digital trade provisions that reflect the principles that we outlined in the first version of this report, which we published in January last year. So we absolutely believe the UK can and should be a key international player in a champion of liberalising trade around the world, putting digital trade at the heart of its policies. And you can see on this chart some of the points that we think are important in considering what the UK should do and how it should try to work with other leaders in this space. So I've talked already about what COVID has done. It has uprooted economy and society, but it has shown the essential role that digital technologies play in keeping both functioning. It's kept people connected. It's helped families stay connected. It's also helped maintain complex international supply chains, even under the greatest of strains. But it has also laid bare the challenge of digital divides. And they exist both in the UK and particularly across the world. Not everyone has the kind of connection that enables. Not every business has the ability or was ready to set up to trade online or enable their workers to work from home. So the UK should make closing the digital divide, both domestically and in developing nations, a central part of its COVID-19 recovery strategy. And that strategy should include steps to provide access to digital technologies, economic development to support SMEs to adopt these, and education to people, individuals of all ages, as well as business owners of all type, in how to use digital technologies. I mentioned protectionism. And given the rise in protectionism, it's really important that UK has a strong and consistent voice in favour of combating it in multilateral forums. And through bilateral and regional trade agreements, we believe the UK should be a firm advocate of removing restrictions to trade and preventing the rise of new barriers as the global economy adapts to the digital world. We think the UK should be an active participant in the World Trade Organization negotiations and work towards an ambitious and inclusive outcome of e-commerce negotiations. We were delighted to hear this morning from Ambassador Simon Manley, UK's permanent representative to the WTO, about the leadership the UK is showing in these negotiations and the ambition we have to make significant progress in the ministerial conference later this year. International development. As we embark on our own trade policy, it's important to recognise the links between our digital aspirations and international development. So building off the former Department of International Development's digital strategy 2018-2020, the UK should use its international development work to support developing countries' entry into the global digital economy and help them establish themselves in global value chains. We also believe that in free trade agreements, the UK should build off what it's already done in its agreements with Japan and the EU and ensure that all future agreements also include robust digital trade chapters. We should follow the example of the Digital Economy Agreement and utilise new gold standard digital trade provisions in future agreements and accompany these with additional means of cooperation, such as Memorandum of Understanding. We should also go forward with our ambition to join the CPTPP and seek to accede to the Digital Economy Partnership Agreement to help establish our leadership in digital trade. But not just in that way, we should also use other forums to promote digital trade. The UK should ensure it's a proactive leader in these forums such as the G20 and OECD, in pushing for steps that facilitate and enable digital trade, and should use its presidency of the G7 in particular to advance these ends. We were very pleased to see the focus on cross-border data flows with trust in the G7 digital ministerial statement published last month. So, back to the report, the detail of the report. The main part of it is really setting out principles for digital trade and attempting to establish the gold standards in digital trade provisions. And let me highlight those which really fall into 5 areas, although you can see quite a bit of detail on this chart here. And those 5 areas are in data, in tariffs, IP rights, non-tariff barriers, and trade facilitation. Let me start with data. This is an essential foundation to the entire global economy. Enabling the cross-border flow of data must be a part of UK trade agreements, as should preventing the forced localization of data. The definitions of data should be expanded. They should include things such as financial data, which should not be treated differently to other categories of data. Concerns around regulatory and law enforcement access can be mitigated, both in domestic UK law and through international agreements, which the UK should seek to join or replicate. We have seen the re-emergence of tariffs as an offensive weapon in economic disputes, and that's a troubling development. The UK's digital trade policy should seek to extend the protections offered by the WTO's Information Technology Agreement and entrench those in bilateral UK deals. It should also do all it can to protect the moratorium on digital tariffs, both at the WTO level and in its agreements. You know, to allow the imposition of customs duty on electronic transmissions would undermine the digital economy that we're all seeking to build. And as part of that, we must make sure that intellectual property rights are properly protected. They are the enabler of innovation. Any trade deal should seek to build on the UK's high standard of IP protection and should not threaten the UK's membership of the Unified Patent Court and the European Patent Convention. Some states have sought to demand intellectual property access, transfer, ownership as a condition of market access. And the UK should work through its trade agreements to prevent this kind of activity, particularly mandatory transfer of source codes, algorithms, and encryption keys. And in other areas, new technologies transforming traditional notions of intellectual property. The UK's trade policy can enable the development of innovative AI and supporting the use of open government data and data mining. We are particularly pleased to see the open government data provisions in the UK-Japan Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. But, you know, often the primary barriers to digital trade are those behind the border, non-tariff barriers like differing approaches to regulation. will be the main block to digital trade and the export of innovative UK technologies such as AI or fintech products. So the UK's digital trade policy must address that. It should look to build on its new agreements with Japan and the EU and establish cooperation between regulatory bodies. Regulatory cooperation is going to be so important as we go forward. Some of these areas that we've defined as key for regulatory cooperation are things such as AI, emerging technologies, cybersecurity, really important in the digital world, and also digital identities and the whole question of online safety in all its aspects. And we should make sure that digital trade policy is used everywhere and plays a role in facilitating the flow of other goods and services. So e-commerce platforms, for example, have opened global markets in goods for SMEs. The UK should seek to standardise de minimis thresholds to help cross-border trade of small packages. Working with international bodies and other partners, the UK should secure the recognition of e-signatures, expand paperless trading, helping to bring all aspects of trade into the 21st century. But let me move to the next slide. Let me finish perhaps by expanding this a little bit and thinking about things. Just having a good digital trade chapter in agreements on its own won't be enough to put and keep the UK at the forefront of digitally trading nations. There are other areas of policy the government should focus on to support and enable digital trade. For example, mobility of services and people, reducing barriers to the export of services and the movement of talent across borders are important areas. Also, increasing access to telecommunications markets everywhere, really important phase for us to focus on. We need to make sure that important things such as the principle of limited liability, which has enabled so much of the growth of the online economy, helping to safeguard the core principle of freedom of expression and to protect supply chains. We should make sure these things are preserved as we go forward. Governments have a lot to do here. Governments are important buyers of technology, and expanding procurement opportunities will do a lot to support both our thriving GovTech sector, but also other sectors around the world and other businesses. And we must make sure that we do protect our approach to standard setting, which is recognized as a leading approach everywhere. And it's very important to maintain that as we go forward. Given the complexity of modern tech products and the supply chains that go into producing them, another thing we need to think about is ways that people look at rules of origin. We understand the importance of these in order to make sure that the trade agreements reflect the two countries between them. But they need to be reasonable. The local content requirements in rules of origin need to understand there is a very complex and global supply chain involved in many digital and other products going forward. Well, I'd like to finish by highlighting something we've really focused on, both in our current report, but also in previous work that we've done, which is the digital trade and the environment. We think the UK should look to use digital trade provisions to support effective climate action, smooth the path to adoption of climate mitigating technologies. International collaboration must also be at the forefront of UK policy to cut down electronic waste, mitigate other negative impacts of technology. And that should include playing a leading role in any future WTO plurilateral negotiations on trade and the environment. techUK's recent report with Deloitte outlined a series of policy interventions required to support UK growth, including calling for the national data strategy, which we are developing, to have a focus on net zero. For the UK to lead the establishment of an international centre for AI, energy and climate, it's a global challenge. We need to work with all the parties around the world. And we've called for more challenge-led climate innovation, among other recommendations. The UK government should continue to support global efforts to mandate disclosure of corporate climate impacts and emissions, and it should look to ensure that its trading partners are doing the same. It is a global challenge, and we must make sure that we address that. So measures that seem not to have an impact in this area can actually have an impact. So, for example, if you look at the growth of the data center sector, if you avoid cross-border data flow restrictions and avoid data localization provisions, you can actually place data centers in the most energy efficient places in favor of just something that happens to be a local facility. And let me finish just by reiterating the point about the circular economy principles. It's really important that we focus on this in regulatory cooperation and harmonization, that we remove electronic waste products in a consistent way around the world. And we should seek to remove the barriers to the import and export of waste and scrap in cases where sufficient regulatory protections are in place. So I do encourage you to look at the report, to see the detail behind the summary that I've given you here today. We really believe the UK does have a unique opportunity at this point in time to build on its early successes. We are a really strong digital trading nation, and we have in many ways digital industries that lead in many of the areas the world is embarking on. And so we can set an ambitious course for our trade policy with digital right at the heart. The new report is available on the website, and we look forward to engaging with you. Please let us know your thoughts, your feedback, once you've had a chance to read it. This is going to be a theme that we will continue to push and promote as we go through the rest of 2021 and beyond. Thank you for that.